Introduction. Description. Introduction. Introductionist. Anormalististor. Andthecheikgroundindinthefield. I've spent the better part of 2 decades delving into the unknown, seeking answers to questions that most would rather ignore. My name is Emily Maynard, and I'm a paranormal investigator with a reputation for being one of the best in the business. My background is rooted in psychology, which has proven to be an invaluable asset in understanding the human psyche's capacity for fear and the supernatural. Growing up in rural America, I was always fascinated by the local folklore and legends that seemed to seep into every aspect of our lives. From the eerie tales of ghostly apparitions to the unexplained occurrences that would leave us scratching our heads, it was only a matter of time before I became hooked on the paranormal scene. As a child, my grandmother used to tell me stories about the old family farm, where strange noises and movements were said to occur after sundown. She'd whisper tales of a malevolent entity that roamed the fields, seeking revenge on any who dared to trespass. Those stories sparked something within me, a sense of curiosity and wonder that would drive me to uncover the truth behind these eerie events. Years went by, and my interest in the paranormal only grew stronger. I began to study the works of renowned investigators like Hans Halser and John G. Fuller, learning from their experiences and methodologies. I even landed an internship at a local museum, where I had the privilege of studying ancient artifacts and texts that hinted at the existence of something sinister lurking just beyond our comprehension. It was during this time that my reputation as a paranormal investigator began to take shape. People would seek me out for guidance, hoping that I could shed some light on the inexplicable events plaguing their lives. My expertise in psychology and folklore led me to become an expert in understanding the nuances of human behavior, which has proven invaluable in navigating the treacherous world of the paranormal. Now, at the age of 35, I've built a reputation as one of the most respected paranormal investigators in the country. But despite my success, I still feel an insatiable itch to uncover the truth behind the unknown. It's this drive that led me to rural America, where I'm about to embark on a journey that will change my life forever. I've been invited to investigate a series of bizarre occurrences in the small town of Ravenswood, nestled deep within the heart of rural America. The locals are tight-lipped about what's happening, but whispers of an ancient mythology have reached my ears. It seems that Ravenswood is home to a web of deceit and terror that will challenge everything I thought I knew about the paranormal. As I sit here in my truck, parked outside the local diner, I can feel a sense of unease settling in. The air is heavy with an almost palpable sense of foreboding, as if something is watching me from just beyond the edge of town. It's moments like these that make me wonder if I've bitten off more than I can chew. But I'm not one to shy away from a challenge. With my equipment at the ready and a sense of determination burning within me, I'm about to delve into the heart of darkness, where the lines between reality and nightmare will be blurred beyond recognition. I stepped out of my truck and onto the cracked asphalt of Ravenswood's Main Street. The diner's neon sign cast a gaudy glow over the deserted sidewalk, like a beacon calling me deeper into the heart of this forsaken town. I took a deep breath, the scent of stale cigarettes and worn leather filling my lungs as I began to gather my thoughts. This was it, the start of a new investigation, one that would push me to the limits of my endurance and sanity. The local sheriff had been hesitant to share any information with me, but the desperation in his voice when he finally agreed to meet had been palpable. "Emily, we need someone who can understand what's happening out there," he'd said, his eyes darting nervously around the room as if searching for an escape route from the weight of his own secrets. I pulled out my notebook and began to scribble down notes as I watched a pair of locals huddle in the corner of the diner, their whispers carrying on the wind like a faint warning. They glanced at me with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, as if wondering what had brought a stranger into their midst. The sheriff arrived soon after, his face a map of worry lines etched into the skin beneath his weathered eyes. "Emily, I want to show you something," he said, leading me out of the diner and onto the deserted streets of Ravenswood. We walked in silence for several blocks, the only sound being the crunch of gravel beneath our feet as we navigated the overgrown sidewalk. The houses around us seemed to loom like sentinels, their windows like empty eyes staring back at me with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. Finally, we arrived at the location of the first reported incident, an isolated farmhouse on the outskirts of town. The sheriff produced a set of keys from his pocket and handed them over to me, his eyes locked onto mine as if searching for permission to let me in. "I'll be honest with you, Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know what's going on out there. We've had reports of strange noises at night, knocking sounds, whispers, and screams. Some folks have even gone missing." I took the keys from him, feeling a shiver run down my spine as I gazed up at the farmhouse. It loomed before me like a monolith, its windows dark and unblinking as it watched me with an air of malevolent curiosity. "Let's get started," I said, my voice steady despite the growing sense of unease that was beginning to settle in the pit of my stomach. The sheriff nodded, his eyes clouding over like a stormy sky. "I'll leave you alone for now," he said, turning to leave. "But be careful, Emily, whatever is happening out there, it's not natural." I stepped out of the sheriff's car and onto the crumbling driveway, my eyes scanning the farmhouse as if searching for any sign of life. The air was heavy with an unsettling stillness, like a held breath waiting to be exhaled. I took a deep breath, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filling my lungs as I approached the front door. The keys jingled in my hand as I inserted them into the rusty lock, the sound echoing through the silence like a death knell. I turned the handle and pushed the door open, my heart rate increasing with each step. The interior was dimly lit, the only light coming from a faint glow emanating from the windows. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the darkness as I began to survey the space. The furniture was old and worn, the walls covered in a thick layer of dust that seemed to cling to everything like a bad omen. I moved cautiously, my senses on high alert as I searched for any sign of disturbance. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint creaking sound, like the wooden floorboards beneath my feet were shifting and sighing. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I listened intently. The creaking stopped, leaving an oppressive silence that seemed to press down on me like a physical force. I took a step forward, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. That's when I saw it, a small piece of paper on the kitchen table with a single sentence scrawled in red ink. "They're waiting for you." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that I was not alone in the farmhouse. But where and who? I spent the next few days poring over ancient texts and scouring the internet for any mention of Ravenswood or its history. It wasn't until I stumbled upon an old, dusty tome hidden away in the library's archives that I began to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences. The book was bound in worn leather and adorned with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the light. As I opened it, a musty smell wafted up, carrying with it the whispers of the past. The pages were yellowed and crackling, but the words within were written in a language I couldn't understand. I turned the pages slowly, my eyes scanning the text as I searched for any connection to Ravenswood. And then it was there, a passage that spoke of an ancient cult that had once thrived in these very woods. They were said to have worshipped a being known only as the Devourer, a creature from ancient mythology who fed on human souls. The text described how the cult would perform twisted rituals to summon the Devourer, and how those who were chosen would be consumed by its dark power. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I read the words, realizing that this was more than just a simple case of rural folklore. This was something sinister, something ancient and evil. I spent hours poring over the text, searching for any clues or connections to the current events. And then it hit me, the knocking sounds, the whispers, the screams. It all seemed to point to one thing: the Devourer had returned, and it was coming for Ravenswood. It had been 3 days since Sarah Jenkins last left her house. Her husband, Tom, had reported her missing to the sheriff's department, and a search party had been formed to scour the woods surrounding Ravenswood. But as the hours ticked by, there was no sign of Sarah. No word, no message, no hint of where she might be or what might have happened to her. The community was in an uproar, with whispers of dark magic and ancient cults spreading like wildfire through the town. Some said they had seen Sarah arguing with a stranger on the night before she disappeared, while others claimed to have heard strange noises coming from her house in the dead of night. Tom was frantic, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios as he waited for news that never seemed to come. The sheriff's department was stumped, and the local police were under pressure to solve the case quickly. But as I watched the town square fill with anxious faces, I couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. Something that went far beyond a simple disappearance. And then, just as the sun began to set on another long day, a figure emerged from the woods. It was Sarah, but she looked different. Her eyes seemed darker, her skin paler, and there was an aura of quiet menace surrounding her like a shroud. She walked calmly into the square, her eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for something or someone. And then, in a voice that sent shivers down my spine, she spoke a single word: "Welcome." I walked into the old farmhouse, my eyes scanning the walls for any sign of the mysterious symbols I had heard whispers about. The air was thick with dust and the stench of decay, but I could sense that something was off. Suddenly, I noticed a faint scratching on one of the walls, just below the eaves. It looked like a crude drawing of a crescent moon, surrounded by strange symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the light. My heart racing, I gently reached out to touch the wall, feeling an electric tingle as my skin made contact with the symbols. The scratching seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if it were trying to convey a message. I took a step back, my eyes scanning the surrounding area for any other clues. That's when I saw it, a small piece of paper tucked away in a hidden compartment, just above the fireplace. It was folded into a neat square, with a single word scrawled on it in red ink: "Remember." The words seemed to echo in my mind, but I had no idea what they were referring to. I turned the paper over, and on the other side, there was a crude diagram of the surrounding woods, with several symbols etched into the trees. They looked like some sort of code, but I couldn't decipher their meaning. As I stood there trying to make sense of it all, I heard a faint whisper in my ear: "The moon is full tonight." It sent shivers down my spine, and I knew that I had stumbled upon something much bigger than myself. I woke up to the sound of sirens outside my window. At first, I thought it was just another routine call from the police department in Ravenswood, but as I listened more closely, I realized that this one sounded different. It sounded urgent. I quickly got dressed and made my way downstairs to see what was going on. That's when I saw them, a team of officers in bright yellow vests, their faces grim and worried. They were surrounding the old Jenkins farmhouse, their lights casting an eerie glow over the scene. I felt a sense of trepidation wash over me as one of the officers approached me. "We found a body," he said, his voice low and serious. "It's Sarah Jenkins." My heart skipped a beat as I processed this information. Sarah was Tom's wife, the woman who had gone missing 3 days ago. How could this be? I felt like I was in a nightmare, trapped in a never-ending loop of horror. The officer handed me a photograph of the body, and my stomach dropped as I saw her face staring back at me. There were no signs of trauma or struggle, just a sense of peacefulness that seemed almost unnatural. "What happened to her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The officer hesitated before answering. "We're not sure yet." He looked around nervously as if afraid of being overheard. "But we know it wasn't natural." My mind was racing with questions and theories, but one thing was certain: this was just the beginning. The first death in Ravenswood was only the start of something much darker, something that would change our town forever. As the days passed, I found myself becoming increasingly entrenched in the mystery of Ravenswood. I spent every waking moment researching, investigating, and trying to piece together the clues that had been left behind. But with each passing day, I began to feel a creeping sense of unease. The lines between reality and nightmare were starting to blur, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from just beyond the edge of perception. I started to experience strange visions, fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of my vision, or moments of perfect clarity that left me with a sense of disorientation. The words of an old book kept echoing through my mind. The truth is not always easy to find, but it is always out there. I knew then that I was getting close to something, but what? The further I delved into the mysteries of Ravenswood, the more I felt myself losing grip on reality. I began to question what was real and what wasn't. Were the visions just a product of my fevered imagination, or was there something more sinister at play? I tried to keep an open mind, but it was getting harder by the day. The world around me seemed to be spinning faster and faster, and I found myself struggling to keep up. One night, I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing with fear. As I sat there trying to calm my racing thoughts, I heard a faint whispering in my ear, "You're getting close." I spun around the room, but there was no one there. The voice seemed to come from all around me, echoing off the walls. Suddenly, everything felt like it was dissolving into chaos. I knew then that I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. As I continued to dig deeper, I stumbled upon an ancient text that seemed to hold the key to understanding the strange occurrences in Ravenswood. The book was bound in black leather and adorned with intricate symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the light. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, sensing that I was about to uncover something that was meant to remain hidden. As I began to read, I realized that the text described an ancient cult that had once thrived in the area. They were said to have worshipped a dark deity, one who demanded human sacrifice and ritualistic bloodshed. The more I read, the more I felt a creeping sense of dread. This was not just some ancient myth or legend. It seemed to be based on real events. I discovered that the cult had been active in the 18th century, and their activities had left a dark stain on the town's history. According to the text, They had performed human sacrifices on the very same grounds where Sarah Jenkins' body was found. The thought sent shivers down my spine as I realized that I was walking in the footsteps of people who had committed such heinous crimes. I felt like I was uncovering a piece of Ravenswood's dark past, and it was making me question everything I thought I knew about this town. As I delved deeper into the text, I began to notice strange symbols etched into the pages. They seemed to be some sort of code, but I had no idea what they meant. I decided to take a closer look, hoping to uncover their secrets. The symbols led me on a wild goose chase through the town's history, from ancient rituals to modern-day cover-ups. With each new discovery, my unease grew. Was this really just a coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play? I knew that I had to keep digging, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was playing with fire. The more I uncovered, the more I felt like I was being watched. It was as if the cult's dark energy was closing in around me, waiting for its next victim. I knew then that I had to be careful, that every step I took could lead me down a path from which there was no return. As I continued to dig deeper, I began to realize that everyone in the community seemed to be hiding something. At first, it was just small things, a nervous glance from the postman, a hasty departure from the local cafe. But as I dug deeper, I started to uncover some more significant secrets. It turned out that Tom's wife, Sarah, had been acting strangely in the days leading up to her disappearance. She had been receiving mysterious letters and phone calls, but whenever I asked Tom about it, he just shook his head and said she was stressed out from work. But I wasn't buying it. I started to investigate further, talking to Sarah's friends and acquaintances, and what I found out shocked me. Sarah had been involved in some shady dealings, and it seemed that she had been blackmailing people in town. I couldn't believe it. The sweet, innocent-looking woman who had gone missing was a blackmailer. It didn't add up. But as I dug deeper, I realized that nothing about this small town added up. Everyone seemed to be hiding something, from the friendly face of the local shopkeeper to the stern expression of the police chief. Even Tom, the man I had trusted with my life, was hiding secrets. He had been acting strangely too, always glancing over his shoulder and whispering on the phone. It was as if he was waiting for something to happen, but what? I felt like I was trapped in a web of deceit, and I didn't know who to trust anymore. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that everyone in this town was playing a role, and it was all just a big act. But what were they hiding and why? I knew that I had to keep pushing forward no matter how hard it got. I couldn't let them get away with it. But as I walked down the main street of Ravenswood, I felt like I was being watched. Every window seemed to be watching me. Every door seemed to be listening in. It was as if I had finally uncovered the truth, and now everyone knew my name. The question was, what would happen next? As I walked down the dimly lit alleyway, my heart racing with anticipation and fear, I finally found myself face to face with the source of the terror that had been haunting me. The figure stood before me, its presence seeming to fill the entire alleyway, casting a long and ominous shadow on the ground. I steeled myself for what was to come, knowing that this moment would either bring me closure or confirm my worst fears. As I looked into the figure's eyes, I expected to see something monstrous, something evil that had been lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. But what I saw instead took my breath away. It wasn't a monster at all. Instead, it was a person, a woman with piercing green eyes and long, dark hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall of night. She looked at me with a mixture of sadness and regret, as if she had been waiting for me for a very long time. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she reached out a hand and touched my face, her fingers tracing the lines of my cheeks and nose with a gentle touch. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I looked into her eyes, seeing something there that I couldn't quite explain. It was as if she knew me, as if she had been searching for me for years. "Why are you here?" I asked again, my voice still shaking slightly. The woman's gaze never wavered from mine. "I'm here because I've been watching you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been watching you for a very long time." As she spoke, the world around us began to fade away, leaving only the two of us standing in that dimly lit alleyway. It was as if we were the only people left on Earth, suspended in a world of our own making. And then, it hit me, the woman wasn't the source of the terror at all. She was its victim. The truth dawned on me like a bolt of lightning, illuminating the darkness that had been shrouding my mind for so long. I realized that the true horror wasn't the monster I had imagined, but the one that lurked in the shadows, preying on the innocent. And the woman before me was its latest victim, a soul trapped in a living nightmare from which she might never awaken. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling from the revelation. The woman's eyes had locked onto mine, and I could see the desperation, the hopelessness, and the terror that lay within them. She was trapped in a living nightmare, and she knew it. As I turned to flee, I felt a hand on my shoulder, spinning me back around. The woman's face was inches from mine, her breath cold and rank. "You can't leave me," she whispered, her voice like a rusty gate. "I need you." I tried to shake her off, but she held tight, her grip like a vice. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want you to see," she replied, her eyes blazing with an otherworldly intensity. "I want you to see the truth." And then, in an instant, it was over. The woman vanished, leaving me standing alone in the alleyway. I stumbled forward, blindly making my way back to the safety of the street. As I emerged into the bright sunlight, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. The world around me began to distort and writhe like a living thing. The buildings seemed to twist and contort, their windows like empty eyes staring back at me. And then I saw it. A figure lurking in the shadows, watching me, waiting for me. I knew then that I would never be free from the horrors I had experienced, that I would always be haunted by the terror of what I had seen. The woman's words echoed in my mind. "I want you to see." And I saw the truth. The world was a twisted, nightmarish place, full of monsters and terrors beyond human comprehension, and I was forever changed by it.